Hello and welcome back to the Pals Anime Lounge, a podcast where a bunch of pals get together to talk about anime using the 3-episode rule. I'm your host Nikki, and joining me are Ace.
Hello.
And Rhodes.
You alright?
Welcome one, welcome all, and welcome back to another episode. Today, we're going to jump straight in because today's show is Remake Our Life, which is, I believe, the first show in the summer 2021 anime lineup to have an extended first episode, 50 minutes long in length. So whilst we've watched 3 episodes, we've kind of actually watched 4. It's a bit of an awkward one. To provide some context, Remake Our Life is a romance drama slice of life that has been done by Feel Animation Studio. That is Feel, F-E-E-L, who, whilst having a look just before we started recording to make sure my notes were correct, have worked on quite a lot of anime. Some noticeable standouts include the recent Dropout Idol Fruit Tart, Outbreak Company, which is a interesting isekai to say the least, and the one that stood out the most, which I saved till now to tell you two, they worked on Kiss X Sis.
Oh.
Yeah, which is the
very different show.
A very different show. For anyone who's not familiar with Kiss X Sis, ask your parents.
Aren't we their parents? Isn't that the point?
Oh, I don't know how I feel about that. Yeah, it's a borderline hentai. But anyway, Remake Our Life is thankfully not a borderline hentai. It's rated PG-13 and it's based on a light novel of the same name. And the premise is kind of a bit long, so here's the short version. The show starts by introducing us to the protagonist, who is a 28-year-old, works in game dev, isn't particularly doing too good, just been laid off from their company, which shut down because of, not doing well. Moves back home, is kind of down on their luck. They kind of get a lucky break with a new company, but unfortunately, a few months later, the same thing happens. And throughout this whole kind of opening 20 minutes or so, we're given we're given a look into the psyche of this character, and a lot of their kind of trouble, if you will, comes from this point in their life where they feel they made the wrong decision, and that was that they chose what they say is the normal route, going to sort of academic university rather than sort of like an art school that they got accepted into. And they keep focusing on that point. And, he wishes that maybe he could go back in time and how life would have been had he gone to the art school, and maybe he would have potentially met this group of creators. They're referred to as circles in Japan, which is just essentially a group of people who publish work together, called Platinum Generation, as that would have been the same year that he would have attended. And lo and behold, he wakes up the next day and has gone 10 years into the past and is given that opportunity to select the other route and see how life would have been, and essentially remake his life. You could, in a way, say that it's an isekai. It's not an isekai, but I've seen some people say it's an isekai. It's not.
There are people who say that everything's an isekai.
At this point, yes. But he's gone back in time. He's kept all of his memories of the future. There's a fantastic scene when he first wakes up and he's pointing things out like, hang on, where's my manga? Where's this series? I thought we got rid of this old TV. Where's my smartphone? And that was kind of cool. But very quickly, the show, and this is kind of like my first major point, and this is like my main talking point, I suppose, for this episode, is the show has a bit of an identity crisis. On the one hand, it really wants to dive into this thought of like, what could have happened? Like, what if you'd done that course, or you decided to follow that dream? And over the first couple of episodes, we see the main character trying to figure out what it is he wants to do, where he belongs in this creative field, and you see some of the realities of the industry as well. There's a brilliant bit of the opening seminar where there's like over 100 of them, and they make a point that like only 8 graduates from the year before actually have jobs. So it's quite kind of harsh. And then in the next scene, you've got like an implied sex scene, cleavage, lots of bouncing, and like it's just back and forth. It has no idea what it wants to be, and it's really frustrating.
It took until the 3rd episode before I actually started to like any of the characters, and that's because the teacher turned out to be quite a bit of fun.
I've watched all 3 episodes, and I wish I could remake my life so I could go back to the time where I discovered anime, so I could not watch anime to avoid the moment where I had to watch all 3 of those episodes.
It's a bit more than 10 years ago.
Oh.
The first episode, it kind of keeps roller coastering, like it's keeps trying to fake you out, like oh no, he wasn't actually sent back in time. Oh, but actually, yeah, he was.
The first episode is good for like 10 minutes when it like introduces you the brutal reality of the games industry, which is that you're overworked, underpaid, and you're always going to get laid off. Sorry to anyone who works in the games industry.
Well, no, that's actually something I really like. That the first half, annoyingly, the first episode, as we said, it's 15 minutes long. It actually feels like it's the first two just stitched together. There isn't really like there is an actual like cut off point around the 23-minute mark. That's like this is where that episode ends. You've just stuck the first two together. However, because when he joins the second company just before he gets sent back in time, he's full of like he's re-energized. He's kind of got not the job he wants, but he's just happy to be given a second chance. He's proven himself, and the team he's on, they're on like a kind of a lesser project than this other project, and then they get shafted. It gets put on hold. They all lose their jobs, and it's interesting that like this show is trying to kind of have this kind of grounded reality of like this is what it is, because it is true. Like you look at the second episode when they're in the lecture and they say like out of like 100+ people, only 8 a year later actually have jobs. Film directors, script writers, animators, etc. Because he joins a visual arts course, and I liked that. I really really liked that, and when he finds out as well that like because obviously this group of creators that he kind of idolizes, he ends up living with them, although at the start he doesn't realize. And he's dealing with their kind of insecurities and their faults, their challenges. And when it has those moments, when the show decides to have that like 2 minutes of like, okay, let's be really gritty and like hard and real, it's so good. I started the third episode not wanting to watch it, and that opening couple of minutes where you see the film they've made was really good. I loved that. Then the rest of the episode's quite mediocre. It gets a bit terrible towards the end with the karaoke and the unnecessary kind of shoehorning in a love plot. But then jump back to the bit where you've got the classmate talking to it's the end of the second episode, isn't it? When he talks to the teacher about the role of a producer. That was brilliant. That was arguably the best like 2 minutes of the whole 2 hours of anime we watched. But then the show is then immediately like, oh yeah, by the way, there's girls here and boobs, and we're going to imply sex again because it's an anime.
I think the problem with this show is that all episodes of this could easily be summarized in about 2 minutes worth of footage. And it's point like that first episode is it's like, what is it, 50 minutes long, I think, pretty much bang on.
Yeah, it's exactly 50 minutes.
And I remember watching it and I'm just like, you could condense this down into 25 minutes and I would still got as much out of it as I did from the full 50, because it's just full of filler. It's just like every now and then, and the thing is, the bits that are important aren't even good. The bits that are important are just like, it's just like an offhand line, which is a twist or confirms something, and you're like, that's great, but like, there's no build to it. They just randomly turn around. They're like, oh hey, I'm important, and you're like, oh, well, thanks for letting me know.
One of the other things as well is like in the second episode when he's starting to realize that the people around him are much, because that's one of the things that happens early on, is he realizes that even though he's had experience in the industry and he's taken all those experiences and memories back with him, he's actually not that good. He realizes that everyone around him is far better. So he's starting to try and figure out like, okay, what is it that I can do? What is my place in all of this? And bearing in mind that, he's friends with they call themselves the Platinum Generation, these group of creators who will in the future become amazing, world-renowned, and yet suddenly they can't do anything without him, and he becomes like the glue that holds them together. Like their first group project nearly goes completely wrong until he basically sorts it, and that kind of bugs me. It's like, I mean, obviously he's the main character, so yes, he's going to have some involvement, but it's kind of a shame that it's like, oh, actually, I'd have liked to have seen him not have taken a center stage role of like, I kind of want to focus more on him trying to find his place amongst all these people rather than becoming the center stage, if that makes sense.
It would have been more interesting if he struggled and they helped him rather than the other way around, because them struggling and him helping doesn't make sense because we saw that they were successful.
Exactly. Like I think it's the end of the third episode where the girl says to him like, I might stop drawing art, and he's like, no, you have to keep drawing art. It's like, well, hang on, that doesn't make any sense.
In the original timeline, why did she keep drawing art if she was considering giving it up? my issue is it's a very slow-paced, boring show. It's very well made. Everything looks great. It sounds great. The ideas are good. It's just so boring.
Yeah, there's a great attention to detail in the show. It's one of the best kind of looking. It flows really well in terms of the actual motion and movement. There's a lot of really nice attention to detail. But yeah, it's the pacing. I think for me, my issue is that the premise and like the reasoning behind the main character wanting to go back in time and remake his life is genuinely quite an interesting one, and it's quite a human one. It's not like, oh, I wish I could have asked that girl out. No, it's a genuine like, I wish that my life had gone differently, and I know exactly where that point is. And like, that's fantastic, and I think that's something that quite a few people can relate to. But now it's by the end of the third episode, you're just like, okay, we're just turning into standard slice of life. Probably gonna end up with like a harem, maybe. I don't know. It's a shame because again, it's that initial premise. Although that first episode is really drawn out, from the point up to where he wakes up and basically realizes he has the chance, which essentially is the first episode because that's kind of the middle point of that 50 minutes. Although that was slow, that was good. If they'd have kind of kept with that, I think it would be more engaging. But yeah, they've kind of just slipped into like standard slice of life. Where now and again, where you get that 2 minutes every episode that's like, oh yeah, this is the reason I want to watch this.
Yeah, for me, I think the biggest problem is that this is a guy who, at the start, he gets a degree in like some kind of economics, isn't he? I think it was. But that's what he did, and then he got an office job, and he gave up the office job to work in art in the games industry, and he loses his job, and then he loses his job again. And his way of fixing the fact that he keeps losing his job is to go back and get a degree in the industry that he's going to keep losing his job in. And I just don't see the point. The issue wasn't that you weren't good enough. Like, the whole point is you were very talented. It was the industry that's fucking you over. And the way you want to fix this is to go back in time and just cement yourself into the industry that you keep failing in.
Well, it's not even that. Like, the fixation seems to be on Platinum Generation. And it's on this idea that, like, oh, if I'd met them, maybe I could like be as good as them. And it's like, no. If you met them, you're hoping you can kind of work your way in, and that's what happens essentially. Which is, and the guy is talented. Like, he has a wide range of skills. He's pretty much set up to be the producer.
But does he only have these skills because he's 28?
Yes.
So if he had originally met the Platinum Generation, he'd just been left in the dust.
And yeah, and this is the thing, and like they there's a moment where one of the girls is giving him a bit of a heart. They're having like a heart to heart, and Shino basically, like, she is this artist that he in the future loves, and she's very successful. And she's going on about how, like, oh, she can't do anything, so that's why she's gone to this art school to maybe like find out what she's good at. She's like, oh yeah, I can't even look after myself, can't cook, clean, etc., etc. And then it's like revealed that she's a super talented artist who has like I guess self-confidence issues, if you will. And I get what they were trying to do, but it kind of just undermines the entire scene.
I believe she says at one point that she knows that she makes good art, but she doesn't think she's very good, even though she's won some awards. She specifically says she's won awards for art, and that's just crazy to me.
There is a good message to be found here, though, that like they are trying to push that, like, groups can be, working together can be beneficial, learning from each other, helping each other, and that's really good. And there are like bits and pieces throughout that I was like, oh, that's quite good. The moment where the teacher's explaining to, they're doing their short film, and she's explaining about how, like, here's a script of a film that just came out that was set to be amazing and it flopped because there were no constraints, there were no rules, everyone just did what they wanted, and like that was a really good scene. I feel like my complaints about this show personally are disappointment, because although I went in thinking this was going to be like your typical, okay, slice of life, the guy just gets sent back in time and, oh boy, time to find the best girl. The actual premise as it started to unfold in that first episode, I was genuinely interested and like got hooked, and it just nosedived so quickly.
Oh, yeah, I was with you. Like, it's just like, I thought the same when I first started watching. I was like, this is actually quite cool, like the way everything's been set up here. But it's like A said, it just doesn't. It just leaves that sort of setting behind very quick. Like it sets the opening sets it really well, and then it just abandons what it does, and then it takes ages to do anything vaguely interesting again. In fact, I mean, in my opinion, I don't think it does. Like, I don't think anything interesting happens after like the first 10 minutes, but it just throws away what was interesting about it for the sake of being like, hey, we're going back in time. We're all kids again. Let's go.
You mentioned earlier, Nikki, that it keeps. It doesn't know what it wants to do. It just randomly goes to, oh, look, boobs. I couldn't help but notice when the two of them were working in the supermarket, and I'll reach up to that high, to put that can in that high place above your head, and she's shoving her boobs in the back of his head, and he's like, oh, it's a good thing my mind is still 28 and I'm not reacting like a teenager. And then in like the next scene, he's thinking about boobs.
That scene also really confused me because like they're university students. They're all I think they're in their 20, like 20. You know, they're all at least 18. But it's really weird, that scene, because it's like, well, hang on a minute. Are you trying to say that like you're more pervy because you're actually 28, or less pervy because you're 28? Like, what's going on here?
The thing is, this touches what I really didn't like about it. This guy is still 28, and he's just flirting with like 17, 18-year-old girls, right? And that's weird as fuck. Is that just me, or?
I mean, that's an issue in pretty much every time swap isekai nonsense. Like that's always an issue. It's just like, well, actually, the person inside is, so it's an awkward gray area, I suppose.
So in his mind, he's like, oh, I don't act like a teenager anymore. And one of the other characters even comments in the episode before that he acts really mature. And then right at the start of the third episode, when they're sitting down to watch the movies that they've made, the way he reacts to the girl who's teasing him, saying, "Oh, we're gonna beat you," is like he's preparing to go into battle or to do something when you're just sitting there watching movies that are already made. There's nothing you can do to change the outcome to make people react differently to what they are about to watch. What is with this reaction?
They try to really up the ante with the sort of the whole art school thing, if you will. I don't know. It's really weird. I think, like, for those listening, like, I think I don't know if we're conveying it well, but the point I think the three of us are in agreement here is that, like, that tonally the show is all over the place, but there is a good kind of premise. But I'll be honest, I guarantee you that every episode past that third episode is going to have the same formula. That there'll be like a bit of slice of life, bit of like flirty, and then they'll be like, all right, time to do the next bit of work. Something will go wrong, something will be a blocker, and the protagonist will miraculously save the day. Or maybe he'll be the problem and there'll be like a kind of flip round. I don't know. It feels like a show that, like, I don't particularly feel like there's enough variety in what we've seen to keep me feeling that for the next, it's 12 episodes, that for the next 9 episodes there's going to be a lot going on. And I imagine it's going to end with like them forming Platinum Generation, or there'll be the time skip. I don't know. I've not read the light novels.
I hope it ends with them forming Platinum Generation and then he still gets laid off.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, the start is him getting laid off because the company that he's working for the second time around chooses the project with Platinum Generation. So he's inadvertently going to be part of the cause of about 30, 40 people losing their jobs anyway.
What an asshole.
What a git.
I don't know. Remake Our Life. It's pretty. It's well animated. It's clearly got a high production value, but it is all over the place. And I will admit, as much as it sounds great, one of the voices really annoying.
Oh, I know exactly who you mean. It's the yogurt girl, isn't it?
We haven't even spoken about the yogurt.
I didn't want to, but it's out there now, so I'll let you take over.
Tonal shift. This is a perfect example. We get that first kind of like 30 minutes in that episode. We got all that down to earth stuff, and then, as I mentioned, implied sex scene. There's yogurt. Yeah, you can see where that's going.
Wait, what is it she says? She says, nothing beats yogurt in the morning, is it? And then it's like the milky splash. And I was like, what the
Yeah.
That yogurt had been there all night. That with the lid off. That was not.
Yeah, that was not going to be a good. That was
No.
nowhere going to be good.
It wasn't even a corner snap pot, so I don't know why she was going for it. Like, it would have been shit.
It also doesn't explain, like, they just like gloss over the fact that she just walked into his room and just slept next to him, and her only reason is, oh, I couldn't be bothered to make my bed, and they never come back to it, and it's like, what? But yeah, I don't know. It's I feel like we'll just go around in circles. But yeah, Remake Our Life. It's a long first episode, but to be honest with you, if by the end, if you don't get to the end of that 50 minutes having loved all 50 minutes of it, this is not the show for you. Like, I'm just gonna say that right now. I'm jumping ahead of myself here, but I'm giving this a thumbs down. Like, that's just straight up. I'm giving this a thumbs down. Yeah, I guess over to you two. Thumbs up, thumbs down, or a meh for the first 3 episodes. Ace.
Thumbs down.
Rhodes.
It's too disinteresting. It has to be a thumbs down. It's a thumbs down. I don't even think I can continue watching it, even if someone tells me the next 9 episodes are the best 9 episodes of anything ever. I think the damage is done. I don't think I'd ever return to it.
Well, there you go. As always, we'll give our final verdict at the end of season episode. Not that I think there'll be much difference from this one, but yeah. Thank you for joining me, Ace and Rhodes. And of course, thank you very much for listening. We release new episodes every Thursday and Saturday at 8 p.m. UK time, so make sure to check back wherever you're listening to this episode to catch the next one when it goes live.